Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I want to chat with you about some online course design and building asynchronous communities. I see a really big need for online courses, and there's a lot of institutions that are growing in that direction. But it is a challenging thing to do well, and it's a challenging thing to stay on top of. It requires a little different skill set, but I also like to think of it the same skill set that we have from teaching face to face, but we need to think about certain modifications. But we'll talk about that. Uh, if you have questions, please use chat. I teach remotely. I'm very good at using chat. Send a message, send a DM. Let me know what your questions are as they come up, and we'll be really fluid and we'll chat about them. So I want to start with talking about why do we need online and asynchronous courses? Um, in some cases, it's about increased reach. My students in my certainly my asynchronous course, many different ages, many different situations, many different geographies. I have students all over the place, and sometimes they travel too. But it allows them to access UTK and quality education from wherever they are. Time flexibility. More and more students are having to work full-time jobs in order to pay for college and all the things that go associated with it. People have careers, people have families. With the IDP, Tennessee's been reaching out to people who have completed some undergraduate work but not completed all of it. And so this is a chance for them to get back into it and finish up their degrees. So lots of adult learners, continuing ed, people from diverse backgrounds and with different sorts of situations. It also provides for reduced barriers, personal, financial, mental, physical. Going to a university and going face to face and be able to live nearby and uh, commute there or spend time in the dorms is a financial barrier for some people. And so being able to access education in a way that reduces those barriers, I think is really kind of amazing. So the one of the first things I want to do is I'm going to throw up a little poll. Oh no, I don't have polls in this account. Uh, what I want to know is how comfortable you are with the idea of designing an online and asynchronous course, and how comfortable you are with the idea of running an online and asynchronous course. So we'll do this from 1 to 7. Not sure why not able to pull up my polls. Don't save. But we'll do this from 1 to 7. So one being I am not comfortable at all. Heck no, give it to someone else. And 7 being yes, absolutely. Put me on task. So let me know. Put it in chat. 7 for both for Des. Nice. Yeah. How do you feel? 1.7 or for 1727. All right. Designing and running. We've got some pros. Bit shaky for both, but excited. That's nice, Jennifer. Yeah, that's good. Out of 6. 4, 2, 7 for both. 6. Okay, so we've got a lot of people here very comfortable with designing and running online classes, which is fantastic. That lets me know a little bit how to shape the rest of this talk and this discussion. What I want to know now is what are the big questions? What brings you here today? What things do you really want to know about teaching online? This is a talk where we're going to cover a lot of things, but we're also going to focus on creating engaging online communities. What sort of questions have you come to this talk with? What sort of things are you coming in with? What do you want to know? That's what I'm curious about. What are the big questions? Because it is kind of daunting, even if you're saying 7, designing and running an asynchronous course. It's tough. It's challenging. What do you want? What are your big questions about this? hmm Yeah, Beyond the discussion boards, yeah, I hate discussion boards. They are dry and boring for everyone, for faculty, for students, for in terms of grading. Anything new that worked for me, yeah, we'll talk about that. Group work can be very challenging to do in an asynchronous class. Yeah, overall engagement. Mhm. Students not only engaging with the content, but engaging with us as instructors, engaging with each other. Uh, yeah, Joy. How to design and assess an engaging asynchronous course, the main differences. We'll cover a little bit of that, but we certainly can talk about that more. I've been to the Quality Matters program. My course is currently go undergoing an engaged online review, so I know all about that part of the process as well. Maintaining dynamic, engaging online environments. Yes, Kristen, that is a big one. We'll chat about how to measure student success in the asynchronous environment. That is a challenge. How to facilitate student connections with each other. Yes, yeah, because that is kind of tough to do. Oh, how do we manage academic integrity with exams in the world of AI? That is another talk, Bob. I think we can touch on that for a bit. I'm also happy any questions you guys have for me after the talk, I'm happy to stick around or meet with you guys, one-on-one to chat about stuff. I love doing it, so great. There's no clear consensus on what asynchronous classes look like or remote classes, and students' expectations can differ a lot. But there's also no clear consensus on what face-to-face classes look like. Some people use straight lectures. Some people do a lot of team based learning. Some people operate in flipped classrooms. Some classrooms are more seminar based. Some are more discussion based. But there is a focus on asynchronous classes because it's something you can look at and kind of get a bird's eye view from. Uh, you can look at a whole course at once and see all the materials and how it's organized, and you just can't do that in a face-to-face class. So I would argue that face-to-face classes are just as varied. It's just that we're used to how they look, and we have a better idea of how it should look when they're being designed and created. A lot of face-to-face design is embedded in the fact that it's face-to-face. And so one of the things we're going to talk about a lot today are affordances. They're properties of the environment that facilitate interaction. So I've got this picture here, light switches. Up is on, down is off. If you've ever been to a house where the light switch is flipped over, it's annoying, right? Because it's backwards. There's lots of affordances, lots of things embedded in the face-to-face environment, which facilitates engagement. And oftentimes we don't think about it because it's a product of the environment. For this idea, I kind of got inspiration from Understanding Media, which is an old book. The first chapter is, you've probably heard this before, the medium is the message. And the idea about that is not the content that matters. And we're not talking about the content of the course, but the content of the environment. Um, the face-to-face class dictates our interactions. An online class, we don't have that space. We don't have that scaffold. And so what I think we need to do is we need to examine what we take for granted in our face-to-face courses. Because in a lot of times in face-to-face courses, uh, our interactions with students are highly facilitated by the fact that they're face-to-face courses. The fact that we have what I'm going to call affordances for interaction, opportunities to interact that have sort of a partial framework around them that simply don't exist in asynchronous courses unless we create them. So when we think about what teaching looks like and what good teaching looks like, we tend to think about face-to-face courses because those have been around for years. They're directly aligned with our ideas about what teaching looks like and what learning looks like. Sometimes a question I get is, well, how do I know in an asynchronous class, how do I know my students are learning? And I would argue that you could say the same for a face to face class. Just because a student is showing up, how do you know they're paying attention? How do you know they're engaged with the material? And engagement can look like a variety of different things. Uh, for face-to-face classes, we have regular meetings. And we've got this beautiful distributed practice. We meet Tuesday, Thursday, we meet Monday, Wednesday. There are particular times and places where students know they're coming into my classroom, that we're talking about psychology, we're thinking about psychology. And in asynchronous classes, we don't, that's not a property of things being asynchronous. So we've got to think about this when we think about asynchronous design. Our meeting times and assignments are spaced out. We have affordances for interactions with instructors and peers. You can just ask students, how are you doing? How's it going? Does anyone have any questions? What questions do you have? You can see students talking with them. You can put them into groups and kind of get a top down perspective of what the groups are doing. And so there's lots of affordances for interactions. Even after class, a student can come up to you and say, hey, I have a quick question, because you're both existing in the same physical space and the same time space. We're also primed to the learning environment. I think this is one of the big things for me with asynchronous design. When students come to a classroom, they're in a classroom. They've come to a particular space and time to learn. With an asynchronous class, they're likely on their bed with their laptop. And so there's a lot of stuff they do. There's not that priming of learning. So we need to think about what elements we can put in our class to help remind students this is what you need to do to learn, and this is what you need to do to be successful. A real-time guidance from the instructor, we're right there. Demonstrations of critical thinking and learning happen in real time. Someone has some student I'm asking for who can give me an example of negative reinforcement. And some student gives an example, and I say, well, that's a good example of positive punishment. Here are the differences. And that can happen in real time. How do we think about creating that in our asynchronous course? How do we get these sort of interactions into the course in one way or another? Uh, the way our classrooms are set up, they're single purpose rooms. In an asynchronous class, people might be in their kitchen. It's a room that serves multiple purpose. It's not an anthropology classroom with skulls and artifacts and stuff. One of the big things is in an asynchronous class, students can feel less connected to the instructor or the course. We're working independently. We don't see one another. And that can cause some strains. Sometimes our interactions are, well, they're asynchronous. We communicate through discussion boards, and those are. I've never used a discussion board because I'm not a fan. Uh, and also, so what we need to do is we need to think about how can we build ways into our class so that students do feel more connected. Because a lot of times what we do is when we think of an asynchronous class, I've known instructors who just say, hey, I've got recorded lectures, I'm just going to post them and students can watch them at home. Boom, that's an asynchronous class. And I don't think that is an asynchronous class. It's not a good one. It's not purpose designed for students working in an asynchronous environment. It's just weird. I don't know. With no regular sessions, students kind of have to determine when and where they're going to engage with the material, when they're going to study, when they're going to read. And that's good, but it also causes a disconnect. We're not all coming to one place and doing the same thing. There's no visibility with other students. I can't, as a student, I can't see other people working. I can't see people making confused faces or taking notes. And a lot of what that does in a face to face class is it primes the students, it sets expectations. This is what we should be doing. Hey, everyone's paying attention to the instructor. I should pay attention to the instructor. Uh, Not having that and thinking of, because our students' mindsets are, this is what a class should look. And so that kind of it makes it tough. There's a higher entry point for communication. In a face-to-face class, students can come up at the beginning and ask you a question, or come up at the end and ask you quick, or even just be on campus. You're going from your office to the bathroom, and a student's like, "Hey, I have a quick question." You're like, "Great, meet me in my office." Uh, there's a higher entry point for a student to communicate with you in an asynchronous environment. They have to decide they want to communicate. They have to find time to go onto email. They have to type things out. They can't just talk it out, and then they have to hit send. Uh, and sometimes they might have that conversation in their head when they're away from email, but never find the time to do it. And so one of the things I do in my asynchronous classes is I try and lower the entry point for communication. I try and build in affordances so that students can very easily communicate with me to lower that bar to encourage more communication. There's little to no direct interaction unless you create it. Uh, think people are kind of on their own, and it's easy to feel isolated. It's easy to feel disconnected from the instructor and from the class, and it's very easy to feel like the instructor doesn't know me. And if they don't know me, I feel bad about asking for an extension, help, uh, needing to talk to you about understanding something better or how a project goes or looking over an assignment to make sure I'm on the right path. There's also students can put off stuff till later. And this is a challenge. In a face to face class, the class is when the class is. And if you miss the class, you miss the class. With asynchronous class, the information is perpetually available. So, how do we think about getting the students to interact with it on a more regular basis and engage with the material itself? If the bar of entry is too high, it's easy for students just to delay it. Well, you know what? There's 2 hours of lecture I'll watch it on Sunday right before I do the homework. So, how do we build to avoid that? It requires the students plan and have these initiation skills to do on time. And some students do, and some students don't. Like I said, every online course is designed a little bit differently. Students come in with different expectations. A student might come into your online asynchronous class with the idea of, look, it's super easy. There's a 20 question final, and then there's also a 20 question final exam review, which are the same 20 questions on the final. And they might, if that's the only online course they've taken, the only asynchronous course they've taken, they might expect that sort of thing. So how do we go about managing student expectations? It requires a higher level of commitment and independent learning skills, right? Students are kind of on their own. So how do we help them get the skills? How do we help them understand what it is they need in order to succeed in our courses? This is a big one I think about a lot. Students want to work efficiently, and it's not just in asynchronous courses, it's in face to face courses. It's less about the learning and more about task completion. Hey, if I need to do 3 quizzes by the end of the week, all I have to do is complete the quizzes. And we want to build a learning environment where students are gaining information, not an environment where students are just checking check boxes off, because a lot of times that's what it can turn into, especially when you consider the quality matters system and how it's set up. It's very much set up for check boxes, which is great for delivering learning objectives and creating material that goes along with them and then assessing it. But it's not good for engaging students and creating a good sense of community. Uh, So how can we design course? This is the big thing. This is why we're all here. I like to think of uh, online course design a little bit differently from face-to-face design. So walk with me here. We've got a planning stage, an organization stage, and execution. And for face-to-face, we've got course design. We create our syllabus and we do lesson planning, and then we deliver content. We've got classroom. We lecture, we discuss, we break up into small groups. Maybe we do team-based learning. Maybe we do sort of a flipped classroom approach. And the nice thing about this in a face to face class is if you need to make changes, you can make changes on the fly. You can adapt to your student needs right then and right there in the same time, in the same space. For asynchronous classes, I think of it a little bit differently. We still have the course design. We still have the syllabus and lesson planning. Here's what we want to do. Um, but then that leads to content generation. So this is oftentimes done before the semester starts. We're creating lectures, we're creating activities, we're creating our own videos and content. We're choosing what we want the students to do and how we want them to interact with it. And this is really big. Do you want students to try and sit down and watch a whole thing once? Do you have smaller videos? Do you have sort of question response sort of thing? Here's a question. Here's some content. Now I want you to respond in some way. And then what kind of responses are the students going to make? Are they going to be private responses to you? Are they going to be public to the class? Is it something you want to springboard and have students interact with one another? So, how do we create that? What I find that I do a lot throughout the semester is community management. And so, because I've offloaded content generation a lot to before the semester, a lot of the big things are decided before they happen in class. What I do on a weekly basis is a lot of interacting with my community. That's the way I try and set up my courses so that my time is not spent generating content on a weekly basis. At least big parts of content, it's been on community management. Also, provide content updates. Things change over time. I like to talk to students about how social psychology, it's my current asynchronous class, is reflected in what's going on in politics and the world today. And so real world examples. So doing those sorts of content updates and also weekly content creation, doing things where I have a presence in my class. It's often easy for people to say, well, I've got all the content there. I've delivered the content as if I wouldn't a face to face class. I don't need to be around. You're on your own for accessing the content. I like to have weekly content where I'm being real with students and talking with them, and they get a chance to at least see me and interact with me in an asynchronous way, and sometimes in a synchronous way as well. So I have this three-pillar model for course design and implementation. The first one's organization. The second one is content. And the Engage Online Course Review covers organization and content. Having worked with Quality Matters before, it focuses on these two things. It does not focus on engagement. That's not a concern. It's to make sure the bones of the course and the content of the course is good, and that you have proper alignment with your learning objectives, and then you have your instructional materials, and then you're properly assessing your learning objectives at the correct level of Bloom's taxonomy. So if it's describe, it needs students need to describe it. If it's identify, multiple choice is fine. And I've seen really, really good courses in terms of the Quality Matters review that students don't like. They're they're wooden. The content is all there. The organization is there, but there's no life in the course. And that's why I have my third pillar is community. So I want to chat with you guys now about kind of how I think about designing courses. And I'd like to know, how is this? Have you thought about this in this way? Because a lot of you are pros at doing this. You're very, or at least very comfortable with designing and running asynchronous courses. So the idea is to set up a course where students are engaged with the material and also have a chance to engage with one another. And so having consistent deadlines is important. But we do this in our face to face classes. One of the things I've been doing since last fall is best by dates and due dates because students want to work efficiently. Look, if it's not due till Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, I don't have to do it till 8 p.m. Sunday. If I know at 8 p.m. I can sit down and just take all the quizzes, then I'm good. I don't need to space that. I just set aside this block of time. And it's really efficient, but students aren't engaging with the material. I got the inspiration from this from milk. It's got a best by date. This is what it's for maximum freshness. And so I have my course organized where, hey, if you want to be able to space this out, if you want to maximize your learning, then here are the dates I suggest you do things. And that way, when you get to Sunday and stuff is due, mm, you've done parts of it. And I have a lot of students who engage with it because I've broken the course down into smaller chunks. And so engaging with the content isn't some big thing they have to do all at once. They can do small parts and use those opportunities to learn as they go so that by the time they get to the end of it, they they can complete their tasks they need to do and they feel like they've learned something. We also know, yeah, there we go, distributed practice. We also know from evidence-based learning and studies that spacing our study out, distributing our practice, having time in between assists with learning. So it helps calm the student down. There's not so much stuff to do, and they have a regular uh, time to turn things in, a pathway. In face to face classes, it's super easy because we meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So stuff is due on Tuesday or Thursday. There's already that reminder. With an asynchronous class, because there are no meetings, there are not a lot of signposts. And a lot of times we just say Friday by 5 p.m., Sunday by midnight. It's pretty consistent. But think about also scheduling things out. When I do my weekly announcements in class, I have best by dates and due dates. And so students know they can see when everything is due, but they also see my plan to get them to complete the work over the course of the week and engage with the material as we go instead of trying to do it all at once. I use increasing complexity of assignments for engagement. Uh, Lots of things are layered, starting with quizzes, then going to short answer or video responses, and then writing or presentations. And so students can see how their knowledge is building. They can see how the assignments and content connects to one another so that they know that when they're taking the quizzes, they're starting to learn the material and then they're going to practice and then eventually they're going to need to create something on their own. We're basically going up Bloom's taxonomy. But by not only creating that, but by letting my students know this is how it's organized, this is how the course is designed to help you interact with the material and learn, I've given them better pathways for engagement in the course. I've told them this is what I want you to do and this is how I want you to do it, which I think is a huge piece that's a lot of times is missing in a lot of courses. Clear and detailed instructions. You can make this Lego R2D2 now. Again, talking about barriers. Students not understanding something is a big barrier for engagement. Look, if I can't figure your website out, I don't want to do it. And you've all come across websites with bad design, bad UX interfaces. If it's too difficult to sort out, I don't want to do it. And so the idea is to make it easier for students to have a lot of scaffolding, have clear and detailed instructions so that it's student centric. I feel like it's very off-putting for a student to go this by the end of the course the student will. That that feels weird. So having it from their language, here's what you're going to do. Here's where you might find it challenging. I refer to my students as it's you, not students. And I think that helps them process the material a little bit better because it's cognitive ease. Detailed expectations. Here's what I want you to get out of the assignment. Here's why I want you to do it this way. Here's what doing it this way is supposed to do. So that there's a clear path for engaging with the material. They don't have to guess about, well, now I'm reading this. How do I use it? How does it go together? I've spent the time to build that up in my courses organization so that they know this quiz is to help me learn the material. And so I should take my time and I should take notes when I do this quiz. And that counts as studying. Because a lot of times students approach any sort of assessment or anything like that in a course with you're testing my knowledge. And that's not what I want them to do. I want them to build their knowledge up. And so I have to be really explicit with my instructions and let them know this is how I want you to interact with this. This is what, if you interact with it this way, here's how you're going to get information from it. And so they can very clearly see how they're supposed to engage with the material instead of them guessing or having to figure it out on their own. Mm. And so detailed expectations of work. Here's what you need to do. Here's how long it might take you. Here's what your learning experience should look like. Here's what I want you to learn. Here's why I want you to think about in a certain way. Here's how this experience is going to pair up with the next little bit that you probably haven't looked at yet. This is going to help you prepare for this sort of material or give you an idea of how to start the next project. So I think it's really important if we want students to engage with the material, we have to design in a way that lets them know how we want them to approach the material. And if you use something like UDL, which is fantastic, a lot of times it's confusing. There's a lot of material and there's many pathways for students to move through the course. Letting them know that there are different ways to do it, letting them know that you don't have to interact with everything, but at minimum, here's what I want you to do. Here's how I want you to be able to extract information out in a very efficient way, and also on evidence-based learning, on like how to study and how to view assessments. In terms of content, I like using a variety of content. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. I do think it's funny the like digital Aristotle project, the idea that when the internet was becoming big, you could learn anything. You don't need school. You can just go and find videos. Um, yeah, but I don't know how they connect together, and I'm not maybe not inspired to learn stuff that isn't particularly relevant to me right now. Recorded videos. I like scripted recordings for introduction to topics, for lecture content. I try and make them small so they're manageable. Looking at a 2-hour lecture video is not it's boring. It's not something I want to do. Uh, Tackling a 12-minute video, I can find 12 minutes away from the cats, the kids, whatever else is going on. I use a combination of OER content and textbook content. I let students know there's multiple ways to learn material. And the reason why there's so much material in my course is because I want to give them options. I want to help them out. If you don't understand it from one place, here are other resources for you. But I let my students know you don't have to interact with everything, it's there for your benefit. If you find it easier to pursue one line of resources than another, that's fine. But a lot of times students will enter the course and their expectations might be, I have to do all of this. Activities, I use a variety of content. I also like student generated content. I like Flip a lot. It used to be called Flipgrid. Students can record videos of themselves. It's now integrated. You can integrate it directly into Canvas and the gradebook. That way I can see and hear from my students. They know I can see them and hear their voices. Yeah, it's such a great tool. Yeah. Um, I've never used discussion boards. I've always used Flip, formerly Flipgrid, because I want to be able to see and hear my students. And I use it in a very low stakes way. I'm not asking them to be great orators, uh, but I use it. We're going to target this concept from the chapter we're on, and I want you to explain it. And uh, how I explain Flip is this is what I want you to do for all the content. I want you to be able to explain things in this way. And so this is a way for you to explain things to me and also hear and see other students. And you can also use it. Dr. Bob has a great deep dive discussion assignment that I use the bones of to get them to interact with one another because now they're seeing and hearing from one another, but it's not in a professional presentation kind of way. It's very kind of low or moderate level discussion, but that is so much better than discussion boards, which tend to be wooden. And there's not a lot of cognitive dissonance that goes on. If you tell a student you need to do these things, they'll do the bare minimum because they're not engaging with the content. Telling them to student to do something isn't having them engage with the content. We've got to provide ways where students want to do these sorts of things. They want to share what they know. They want to share their explanation because then they're engaging with the content. If they have a choice, they're more willing to engage. If there's no choices, then they're not going to experience cognitive dissonance. They're not going to engage with the material. Uh, the big thing for here is community. Like, we want to create good affordances for interactions. Interactions in face to face classes are easy. Students show up in the same place we do, and then we can just talk about stuff. And they make confused faces, and we go, okay, well, let me do that again. Let me try that again. What we need to do is not rely on the student to reach out and contact us. As instructors, we have to be more proactive with community management so that we give opportunities for the students to engage with us, as opposed to having a high barrier of, if there's a problem, you tell me something's wrong, and then I'll look it over, think about it, and then possibly do something about it. I like doing regular check-ins. I've had students in my async social psych class let me know they're like, you're the only professor who checks in on a regular basis. Very student-centric language. Hey, guy, I just want to know how you doing. Is there anything I can do for you? If something comes up that prevents you from doing work, let me know. I'll work with you. You want to have a meeting? Just reply to this email. Let me know when you're free. And so all they need to do is reply to the email and let me know what's going on in their world. And not all my students do, but I get some really positive messages from students. Thank you for checking in. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I was, but hey, while I'm on this email, I was just also wondering about this thing. I wasn't going to sit down and write a whole email asking you this, but since you emailed me, I'll hit reply and just ask you this quick question. Hey, would it be possible if I'm reaching out to struggling students, letting them know that you know how they're doing in the class, and my my approach to this is, hey, I noticed you're probably not doing as well in this class as you want. Uh, Something might be going on in your life. Maybe you need resources. Let me help. Give me the opportunity to help you out. I want to make sure that you can do well in this class and learn all the things you need to throughout the semester. And so that they know I care about them and they know that I know they're struggling. And I don't immediately say, hey, your grades are bad. I make the assumption that it's something about the situation. Something has prevented you from being a good student. How do I help you work around those barriers? A lot of it's demonstrating notice and care. When students when they give you video content, you can see and hear them. Letting them just know that you're out there. You're not just giving feedback, that they're real people and you're a real person too, and you care about them. And then they'll be more likely to want to engage with you in the course because you've created that human connection. I like doing weekly video updates, usually about 5 minutes long or so. I script part of it. Uh, a lot of it's topical, so that goes in the announcement section every week. So I let them know, here's what we're doing, here's what we've got coming up. It's snowing in Minnesota. Uh, and sometimes I put in Easter eggs. A couple weeks ago at the end of the video, I told them one of my favorite dad jokes and asked them to reply. Hey, I'll give you a little bit of extra credit. Send me your favorite dad joke. And I had a bunch of my students. I know they're watching the videos. They're looking for little Easter eggs, and it's creating a better engagement with the class. They know that they can just reach out to me. I've given them a way where they've now emailed me and told me a dad joke. But if they've done that little thing, then that helps. Oh, what if you reach out to individually struggling student, they still don't respond? Um, there's the academics alert system. Is it Navigate? I forget what it is. I've used different systems at different places. Yeah, so that is challenging. I actually was talking with I have a mentee at Notre Dame this semester or this year, and that was one of her issues. Do as much as you can, uh, but there's only so much you can do. I think about this from a therapeutic approach. If the person doesn't see a problem with it and they don't want to change, there's very little you can do. But do everything you can, is what I would say. Reach out to the student, say, "Hey, let me help you. Let me get resources." But at the end of the day, or at the end of the semester, we have to acknowledge that they're adults making decisions and they might not be the best decision for them, but it's their decision to make. And if you've done everything you can to be kind and offer resources, then you've done everything in your power. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see people not do well when they can do well, or people just disappear off the map. Um, but like if I were a clinician, I can't change someone. I can help them change. But they have to be willing to investigate it and invest the time and effort to do so. Mhm. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Sally. Yeah, academic alerts. Yeah. And a lot of times I've done an academic alert and the student responds to that. They don't respond to my emails, but they respond to academic alerts. So yeah. And also, Berta, talk with your colleagues. Like this is something that happens to everyone, and it's super frustrating. But we can only engage so much. I can't make a student do something. I can help them out and provide them with resources, but at the end of the day, I can't make them. And sometimes they make decisions, and sometimes they know they made a bad decision and they're embarrassed about it. And I try and help as much as I can, but they've made decisions that way. Yeah, I have had people come back to me, take my class a couple times, twice actually, saying, "You know what? You did reach out to me. You really tried to get my attention. I fell through, and I want to take your class again because I want to make it up to you. I want to show you that I can do it. You know, my situation's changed. I've thought about it differently." That's good. That's awesome. I wish they did it the first time around, but that's beyond my control. I always use student forward language. Uh, I, this is a gentle reminder that this exam is open, that this is due. Just I want to make sure you're thinking about this sort of thing, as opposed to agentic language. I don't want to demand. I just want to nudge them so that it feels better. I use we our together. The idea that hey, how are you doing? I noticed you're not doing well in our class. You know, let's work together in order to come up with a solution to get you back on track in our class. So that I'm always including myself as part of the equation. I'm not saying you need to do this. It's more about working together with students. Uh, it's warm, it's helpful, and it's very encouraging for students. Hey, you notice, and you're not saying, "Hey, you're not doing well in my class." It's, "Hey, I noticed that you're not doing as well as you probably want to do in our class together." That's lowers the bar for communication. It makes it much easier for students to say, "Okay, he knows that I'm not doing well, but he's not blaming me. He just wants to focus on the solution and moving forward." And that lowers the bar for communal lowers the bar for engagement. Yeah. Communal languages, I find it super important. I get much better responses from students. They're much more willing to talk to me when they know that I'm their ally and I want to go out of my way to help them. I love this quote by Maya Angelou. I think about it a lot in terms of teaching in general, but especially working remotely and asynchronously. It's about the experience. Students don't know whether they're learning or not. It's about the feeling. If we can create good courses with good design that encourage students to interact, they give them a good feel where they want to engage and they want to participate and they want to see what's next, then we have good courses. It's just that with asynchronous courses, we have to design for the experience specifically in mind. Going back to types of language, agentic or communal language, quality matters really wants that agentic. Here's the learning objective. Here's what you're going to do. And I feel like it's just not student friendly. And so when I design my courses, I tend to think of two layers. There's the kind of quality matters layer, the organizational layer, and then there's the student centric layer. This is what the sort of instructions the students need in order to be engaged with the class and feel like the class is accessible from a communication standpoint. But if you can create a class where students feel like you're part of it, they feel like they're learning, then you will have engagement in the class. Uh, and that's why I think about the things we do in a face to face class that just come so naturally, trying to figure out ways to build them into our asynchronous classes so we have that type of communication. Because oftentimes we rely on students, hey, if you have if there's an issue, you get in touch with me. And that's a high bar. But in face to face classes, if students have an issue, they might just come up to you after class and say, hey, is it possible for me to do this? And they're able to ask you very quickly and then scurry out of the room and be like, "Phew, okay, I did that." But the bar is higher for teaching online. So yeah, that's why I always think about this quote. So remember about the educational experience and the way you communicate with them.